It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this. Welcome to a special live version of the GamesBeat Decides podcast to wrap up this GamesBeat event. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us and being a part of this so far. I'm your host, Jeff Grubb. Joining me is Mike Minotti, Rachel Kaiser, and Dean Takahashi. We're gonna get right into it. We're gonna wrap this up, give our thoughts. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some live polls happening where you're not supposed to vote for Mike Minotti. I think that's key. I think that's the big takeaway. So I kind of want to get everyone's like kind of big takeaway so far. Dean, let's start with you. You're the mastermind. You put all this stuff together. What was your big takeaway?
Well, it's I think, as I said in the very beginning, in some ways the metaverse looks so easy and natural as sort of the next evolution of everything, the next evolution of the internet and games. But it's also going to be extremely hard when you think about things like interoperability and all the things that Ralph Koster just said. I did spell out 7 of my talks that I wanted to mention briefly, but maybe I'll just do that after some other people get their impressions in.
That sounds good. Rachel, what was your takeaway? You were writing a lot during the event. Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, I will say that I'm not necessarily a metaverse skeptic because I do appreciate the concept as it has existed in science fiction for a while. But the talks that I saw, what I really liked and what kind of gave me a new perspective on it was that there are a lot of people pitching the idea that the metaverse is a way the way we are approaching the metaverse now, we can sort of do it right. We can build certain things into the metaverse that we didn't get a chance to with like just the internet in general up to now, things like diversity, inclusion, safety, that sort of thing. And yes, it will be difficult to incorporate those, but at least we can have the conversation about it that probably didn't happen when the previous iteration got started.
How about you, Mike? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I am more on the skeptical side, and I thought it was nice to see that in general, it seemed like people were more grounded, maybe a bit more realistic about what can be achieved and maybe the heights for this, at least in like the coming years from just compared to our last Into the Metaverse event even, right? It seems like people are maybe not skeptical. A lot of these people are still very enthusiastic about it, and a lot of them are all in, but they certainly seem more realistic, more grounded. And I thought that was perhaps refreshing to see.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like right there with all of you where the thing with buzzwords is, as someone who writes about games a lot, we hear a lot of buzzwords. We've heard a lot of buzzwords. A lot of us have been doing this a very long time now. It's easy to remember the ones that have come and gone, and it's always hard to know if the next one's going to be the one to stick. I will say that I definitely got the sense from listening to people talk that they are well aware of all the challenges that everyone always brings up with this stuff. Obviously, interoperability being a big one, but there's a ton of things, and like even like in that last one, talking about the social challenges of trying to get people to work together and self-govern in a video game and things like that. All that stuff is like the things that I would first occur to me if I were to think about the problems. It's very easy for me to sit outside and think about the problems, though, and it's nice to realize that people who also realize these problems are still going to try, and I think there's kind of nothing wrong with that. In video gaming, we really don't know what is possible until we try. I think Kim Library made this point, and it stuck with me, where it's like, hey, go ahead and give it a shot, and maybe it doesn't work out how we thought, but chances are we're going to find out what does work, what doesn't, and we'll be left with something that's going to be at least very interesting in the end. You just never know when the next thing's going to come along, and the only way we find out is by actually doing it. Dean?
Jeff, do you now believe that the road to the metaverse is paved with NFTs?
I'm not gonna go that far.
You stepped on the cat's tail.
Yeah.
I think I was talking about people being skeptical about I think a lot of people are much more even grounded and skeptical about NFTs, just because if nothing else, I think you can no longer pretend that consumers are just going to immediately embrace that, because again, since the last Into the Metaverse event, we've seen so much resistance, at least online from Twitter stuff. Maybe we can argue that's a vocal minority or not. I don't know, but it certainly is there, right? And I think everyone's aware of it, and it's now just a challenge talking about those things.
And it's the minority that moves things, right? It's the minority that was mad about loot boxes.
If it is a minority, even.
Right, if it is right, but it's the one that was loud enough about loot boxes that regulation was considered by many senators and across the world. It's the loud maybe minority that you can't ignore because they are the ones that are really shaping the conversation around this stuff. Absolutely. I'll say that I think the resistance to NFTs is very much about people not wanting everything to turn into a market. People do want products. People do want to just show up, pay their money, and get enjoyment. And it's the antithesis of that is, okay, now what if you could make money here? It's a different thing completely. And navigating the transition from that probably means leaving a lot of people who consider themselves gamers today behind, because they're just not going to want to go along with that, because it's never why they were here in the first place. That doesn't mean there's not an audience out there for that stuff. It's just a different audience, an audience that is into speculation, an audience that likely is into gambling as well. But yes, NFTs are their own thing. They have their own audience that convince. Go ahead, Dean. What were you going to say?
Oh, since I'm wearing my red shirt, this is my I Believe shirt.
Okay.
This is the red pill shirt.
Wonderful.
I think it's interesting.
There's
resistance. There's resistance to the resistance as well. That the blockchain companies are not losing heart yet, and they're still sort of soldiering on. And I think they realize that they have to sort of soldier on and deal with and confront this criticism that they've faced, and that's how they're going to get through this. But they don't seem to be giving up yet, which is also good.
Yeah, it's a natural process. Go ahead, Mike.
Do you think? I mean, it seemed like early on, like a blockchain and the metaverse were going hand in hand a lot, and I don't know. This is because they're both exciting new technologies and they're both the kind of the buzzwords. Do you think, is that still happening, or are some of these metaverse creators now maybe thinking, we don't have to have the blockchain be a part of this? That can be just a separate thing, especially if it's volatile and it's maybe something not everyone's on board with. Or do you think those things are still very much interlinked right now, the blockchain and the metaverse?
I mean, I think there's different factions, because I think the walled gardens will be happy to build their metaverses without NFTs, because then they don't have to give ownership away to players, right? But if you're talking about being able to take something and go from one world to another world to another world, then I think it's hard to leave NFTs behind. Like eventually, you need some kind of identification system really to enable either the avatars or things you own, things you buy, to have some kind of provenance. Tracking back to the history of you bought this thing, right? So I think it's sort of like dependent on the definition of the metaverse that you want. If you don't mind having a Disneyland theme park with nothing but Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft rides,
right,
then you don't need NFTs, right?
Yeah, I mean that's honestly the thing that I'm thinking of right now too, because of that deal, where it's like they probably, I know they use the term metaverse, like Satya Nadella used that term when talking about acquiring Activision Blizzard. And Phil Spencer has been doing some talking, and he hasn't really mentioned it all that much. So it definitely makes me think it's like, the kind of thing Satya Nadella says to say, hey, investors, don't worry, this is about the metaverse. But even still, it's definitely, if it's not metaverse, it's definitely like gaming universe stuff, where they're looking at stuff like MCU, and they're saying, hey, we could maybe start bringing all these big games and these big IPs together a little bit more, and something like Game Pass enables that. The reason you couldn't do an MCU in gaming is because having someone come along and say, okay, I'm going to buy this game, and this game's going to be linked into this overall larger universe. Well, every game costing $60 is really prohibitive to participating in that connected universe. It gets really expensive really fast. It's not the same thing as going to a movie. But if everything's at Game Pass and everything's there, and you can have all these characters interacting, maybe in they own Skylanders now. You could bring that back, but maybe start putting Banjo-Kazooie in Skylanders and stuff like that. Like, all that stuff is possible on the table, and now it's like financially feasible for both the creators and the consumers because of this Game Pass enabling that. And it's the kind of thing I think that fulfills a lot of the promise that we talk about here, but still in that Disney World theme park that you're describing, Dean, that I honestly think is maybe more appealing to more people.
Rachel, I think the creators and the gamers are really critical there too, where if you have an open or closed metaverse, the outcome you still want is to have these people get rewarded and have these people be happy. So you want gamers to be happy, and you want the creators really to get their fair share. And I think I think we've heard from different companies here that argue that either path is going to get you that. So you could get that through the walled gardens, but you could also get it through the open metaverse.
Rachel, what are your thoughts on this? Are you thinking that you are gonna, in a couple of years, you're gonna want to be playing a game where you are buying stuff that you could take to the next game, or would you be happy if it's all kind of closed, like closed garden, enclosed games that exist on their own?
Well, what's funny to me is I actually was rereading Snow Crash, sort of in preparation for this, because we might as well go back to where the term came from.
Oh yeah.
And the if you look at how the metaverse is represented in that novel, NFTs, not by that name, are sort of in there already. I mean, they talk about every person having their own identity, which is made up of, sort of customizable, purchasable items that persist across the entire metaverse. And if you look at it purely from, if you remove the economics of it, if you remove the purchasing aspect of it from, which is sort of, I think what a lot of people get hung up on is about the economics and the economy and ecology of it. If you remove that, I mean, I think that Snow Crash sort of like gives us a vision of like what that would look like in the ideal. And the ideal is very appealing, but I don't know if we're ever going to achieve that ideal.
Yeah.
We put it that way. I think walled gardens by necessity, because we did talk about interoperability a lot during the conference. And I do think that is something that is going to be, how do we get people to work together a lot? It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And I
And
think, like you said, it's going to be a lot easier for people to just, for especially a big company like Microsoft to say, like, here's our metaverse. Come and enjoy our playground. But
Yeah.
nothing you have here will exist outside of this.
I thought it was funny that you use theme parks as a example here. I don't mean to be Mr. Theme Park nerd, but
You're Mr.
those
Theme
are
Park
becoming
nerd.
kind of bigger walled gardens than ever now. It used to be that Disneyland had a sci-fi area, and that's where they would put Star Wars and 20,000 Leagues Under Sea and just other things. Now there's a Star Wars section, and that's where you find the Star Wars stuff. And things are kind of becoming almost more consistent, right? And that's a big part of it. Then the opposite end of the spectrum, you have stuff like Fortnite, where it's just a free for all. Put the Rock in there with Spider-Man, with Master Chief, what have you. So I wonder if that is the path. It's just a mixed grab bag of everything, or if it is more of these wall gardens, or at least like next door wall gardens, and that's what Disneyland is, right? It's next door wall gardens. You're in this wall garden, but you can go to the next one. But I mean, I guess again, I'm trying to just make this analogy work. I guess you could still take a Star Wars hat and still wear it into the Old West section of the park, right?
The interoperability of reality is very different, right? Yeah, like we can bring whatever we want from one to the other. Like I'll say that one of the things I definitely found interesting is like some of the interoperability issues have been solved in terms of bringing actual designed 3D assets from one 3D game to another 3D game. Now, I will say that, that doesn't solve the problem of maybe if there's a big 2D game that becomes a big part of the metaverse, is a 3D asset going to translate to 2D? But whatever, these are problems that maybe people will figure out eventually. But the thing about video games.
One thing I would
go ahead, Dean.
Sorry. That the visionaries in this space for both the metaverse and NFTs, they have to see past a certain point, and
yes.
There's a layer here that they have to remove, which is the period of time where we have poorly designed products and we have chaos. Like the chaos part is like nobody agrees on anything, right? And the poorly designed products is like, you don't want to design something with loot boxes anymore. You don't want to design things in a way that are really going to piss people off with pay to win, right? We've learned how to design properly, get rid of that layer, and then you assess whether that technology or the business model is actually going to succeed. And I think if you look back at free to play, they had this period of problems as well. But visionary people did see through that to get to the point where we had properly designed free to play games that had the right business models, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's a lot of what's happening here is we could get stuck in the mud worried about it. Like what I was going to say is like, interoperability is more about actually the way these things function in the game. Like, you buy a car in one game, and you want it to drive like that in every single game, right? Well, you know, each game's gonna have different physics. That stuff doesn't transfer very easily. But yeah, this is a problem where if it's worth solving, if there's money involved in solving the problem, someone will solve it. I will say that when I look at the overall market, though, I don't see and this is me, and this is the skeptical side of me. I don't see the monetary windfall coming from solving a lot of those problems. I see it coming to these giant corporations that continue to gobble up IP, sort of winning the day, because in the end, what people want is kind of what they already have in Fortnite. If you want to play as Spider-Man, if you want to play as Batman, it's already there, and they're kind of happy with that. And they're learning Fortnite. That's the game they wanted to play, so they're just going to keep getting better and better at that one. And they're not really all that wounded by the fact that they can't take Spider-Man with them to the next game. They're just happy playing Fortnite. And guess what? Fortnite could be anything. Fortnite turned into Among Us, and it's already this chameleon, and that can keep adapting as need be. And that seems like the actual answer to this problem that we keep presenting here.
Are you saying it's a metaverse, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that and Roblox, I mean, I get that people have their definitions, but as if we're really just talking about like what people want, these are the metaverses that people want. And then the other side of that, I think, is that description of maybe like an MCU for video games that something like Microsoft could do, or a few of these other companies maybe could pull off. Sony could pull it off, or whatever.
And Jeff, if you don't mind, can we get to what stands out to you from all the talks so far? And if there was a favorite talk or something, I can go last on this, but you guys can go first.
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, the Kim LeBurry's ones really did stand out to me. He was a CTO of Epic Games, and kind of he explained like where they're at and how the problems they're trying to solve. And they do run Fortnite, and yet they still believe in this possibility of the metaverse. And it's like, okay, so and his point about just trying. Again, that really did stick with me, because it's like, what is it going to hurt to try? It's, for me, it's other people's money. Go for it. Like, give it a shot. Maybe we do get something really cool out of this. And if you don't convince the gamers are very, very discerning. It's a very discerning audience. If you can't convince them, or you cannot create a new audience, well then this just won't happen. And it's not really good. I really doubt it's going to take away things that I like. It's not going to take that much. It's not like NFTs, and where it could create this toxic environment where the kind of game I like can't exist anymore because it's attracting too many of these people that really believe in speculation. Metaverse is kind of a thing where it's like, this will be something new that stands alongside the kinds of games I was already getting. And even if my games do interact with these other games in a metaverse, they're still going to pretty much work how I always like them. So go for it. And that sentiment really stuck with me. Mike, you want to go next?
Yeah, gosh, am I allowed to pick something from the Facebook day, or should I pick something just from the last 2 days here?
Whatever.
I like that. I like the mergers and acquisitions talk from our first day, just because that's something that is so on my mind right now. And I think a lot of the planning that they did for that was even like a little bit before the Microsoft and Activision Blizzard thing, right? Like, we were going to do that talk, and then that happened anyway. So that's such a big trend, really. And that's metaverse, blockchain is all important right now. And I still think there's some bubbling and brewing there, whereas all these acquisitions and mergers, like, that's going to be happening now. It's going to be happening immediately. It's going to be happening all throughout the year. And I wonder if that's not really what's going to be shaking up this industry significantly in the next couple of years.
Great. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I also like Kim LeBurry's talk. I thought it was...
Yeah.
I just, once again, it was one of those talks that was just like, hey, I didn't think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I also enjoyed our Women in Gaming breakfast, because that was one of the places where we did talk about sort of what I said at the top, which was, how can we make this a better, more diverse, inclusive, and safe metaverse, which I think is something that I'm glad we're talking about now. And I'm glad it's not something we're trying to retrofit onto the metaverse after it's already here.
All right, Dean, take it away. I know you had a list of stuff you wanted to shout out. I want to hear them.
Yeah. I also like Kim LeBurry's talk. I like the notion that we might be 5 years away from absolute realism in graphics. I liked his explanation of this sniper problem and the metaverse, and how it's really hard to do all that networking to sort of instantly zoom in on somebody somewhere in a very large crowd. So that's like a big obstacle to overcome. I like Dave Mizuki's talk because he was realistic about interoperability is very hard to do, and that what the best outcome is what's good for creators, I think. And Jason Rubin pointed out that he thinks video games will lead the way, in part because the metaverse can't be built without the game engine, and that the people who've mastered the game engine are game developers. And so logically, they're the ones that are going to create this first. Whether they stay on top and don't get run over by all the other big companies out there is an interesting question, I guess, right? I love the ethics and the metaverse panel that Kate Edwards moderated because they had such good warnings about privacy and tracking and things like that. Riz Verk had some really wonderful sort of analysis of this notion of whether we're living in a simulation, and he thinks that we can actually pull this off within decades. So he had like a 10-step process to how we're going to get to everybody living in a simulation. Herman Narala from Improbable, he talked about putting 10,000 people in a single space with their operating system and handling 300 million operations per second. So theoretically solving the problem that Kim LaBerry was talking about with the sniper. And then Ralph Koster's closing talk here about how we have to beware of not forgetting the lessons of the past, and things like Unreal and Unity can't agree on the y-axis.
Yeah, and I like that too a lot.
How are we ever going to get to
that really stuck out with me. That line about the y-axis really stuck to me. It's like, oh man, we're in big trouble.
Yeah. So that's my summary of some fascinating moments here.
We had this poll going asking people who their favorite GamesBeat writer is. Dean has a very healthy lead at 70%, followed by Rachel at 13%. And then me, Mike at 10%.
I knew
followed
it.
By Jeff at 6%. So I'm not last. That is fantastic. We did it, everybody.
You people don't understand.
Yeah,
it's so funny when Mike gets upset when he loses. So there's still time, right? There's still time. Someone do something about this quick.
Well, no, we're done.
I've literally never said this before, but I'm fine with second.
There you go.
Manipulate the election here.
I guess this whole thing might be rigged. Yeah. Yes. I'll
results back.
Occupy Dean's basement or something.
One of us wins. One of us wins. The others have to eat each other.
Yes, there we go. All right, Dean, you're the winner here, so you owe us all pizza. I'm pretty sure those are the rules we agreed on, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, this is the first time your weight and get us.
We're gonna eat something. I'm just saying.
We're gonna eat something. All right, I feel good about this.
Bonuses.
Oh, Jeff's in second now. Boo! Me and Rachel are tied for last. Well, at least I'm tied for last. Those are pity votes. Pity votes.
That's just those are the skeptics.
We're good.
Oh, Rachel's back. Rachel's back.
I'm back.
It's changing.
Tied for last.
All right. We're gonna wrap this up. Thank you everybody for watching and listening.
Look how talented I am.
Mike's gonna do all singing, all dancing for you. Yeah, I knew. I'm trying to stop the count. Let's stop the count while I'm still not in last. Dean, any other closing thoughts? Anything else you want to say while we get out of here, or are you ready to wrap this thing up? Stop the steal. That's right. Oh God. All right, everybody.
That's it.
Yep. So, okay. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to go to Dean's closing remarks. Everyone, enjoy yourself. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for participating. Do tune into Andrea's spaces tomorrow. We'll be discussing all this, and you feel free to raise your hand in that thing, and we can keep this conversation going. Because that's my favorite part. Is it's the conversation. As long as it's ongoing, there's always something new we can learn. And yeah, I can't wait to hear what everyone else has to say. So, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Yeah, that's 1:00 Pacific time with Andrea Renee and Khalif Adams talking about what they liked about it.
I'll retweet it. Yep. So just follow me on Twitter. All right, everybody. Let's get to those closing remarks. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.